How to build a virtual wholesaling business. What's up guys, Zach Ginn here, and in today's video, I'm gonna show you actually how to build a real, legitimate virtual wholesaling real estate business today, my how-to guide, my step-by-step guide today. And the first thing you need to understand before we break it down is there's a big difference between virtual wholesaling businesses and virtual wholesaling side hustles. You can do both. They will both achieve different things, but you honestly need to understand how both of them work because they're not the same thing. A wholesaling real estate business is something where you actually have the systems, the methods, and you're treating it in a professional manner and most likely in a full-time manner and scaling up to a huge income. The difference I've seen between side hustles and businesses is the amount of methods and the scripts and the way they actually approach the business. And what I wanted to today is break down how you can actually make a real virtual wholesaling business. Now, you technically can create a virtual wholesaling business as a side income too, but you gotta treat it a little different than the side hustle or the passive income type strategy most guru type guys try to sell. So my name's Zach Ginn. I'm a real estate wholesaler. I've been doing a lot of virtual wholesaling the past 4 years. My first year real estate wholesaling did all physical and basically moved to a lot of virtual, and now I'm completely virtual because I have people doing it everywhere, and I run a huge real estate wholesaling operation, one of the biggest JV operations in the country. So before we get into it, do me a big favor and smash that like button and subscribe if you like the value I bring and you want to get more free wholesaling content. I don't sell anything, I don't want to sell you anything, I just want to give everything out for free. So if you do me a big favor and hit that like button, let's kind of break it down. So when it comes down to having a part-time virtual wholesaling business, the way I really look at it is if you were putting 10, 15 hours a week in this business, the most you're pretty much capped at is around $250,000 a year if you're doing it all by yourself. If you push it to full-time, you could hit 300K, but really by yourself, you're capped at around basically $300,000 in virtual wholesaling real estate. That is because the most valuable asset, the thing that's most constrained in the real estate wholesaling virtual process is your time, your resources, which is the time you can spend talking to sellers, cash buyers, cold calling. Like, you're pretty much spread very, very thin on these operations, and that stops you from going out here and doing $500,000 or $1 million per year. So the secret here on building a virtual wholesaling business is having employees and systems in place. And that's kind of what we're going to talk about today. So the system's very important because you can go to millions and millions and millions of dollars per year working 5-10 hours a week, but you have the business in place, and that's the difference. For me, I don't have myself going out here on a dialer and cold calling. I don't do that. Guess what I have though? Instead, I have VAs cold calling for me. I have people closing deals for me. I have dispositions teams. I have pretty much the whole process delegated out where I don't have to do it. That's the difference between a quote unquote business and someone who's treating it as a side hustle. There's no issues as doing it as a side hustle, but eventually either you gotta make it or break it and you start treating it like a real business. So let's kind of break down systems and the point here starting out. So let's kind of talk about marketing. And hey, if you don't want to run like a huge virtual wholesaling operation, this is still going to be pretty important when knowing what systems to run for you. If you're going to treat it as a side hustle, trying to get your first deal, second deal, third deal, or your 1,000th deal, right? So number one comes down to marketing. What I can tell you is through marketing, you need to figure out the systems that you want to do. So you got to figure out what list to pull, the right type of marketing channels, the type of really, really important lists, and basically the two schedules and budgets you need to do. So what are the two budgets in virtual wholesaling real estate you need to know? These are time budgets and money budgets. They are equally as important and stuff you got to understand. Where are you going to schedule your time? Where are you going to schedule your money? If you have employees, what are they going to do? It's very, very important you do this. And the one thing you got to figure out first off in your marketing is what type of list do you want to be pulling? Now, there's a whole myriad of type of lists you can pull. Probably in my personal opinion, my favorite list to be pulling is government lists starting out if you don't have a big budget. Now, that's a big myth and misconception. I think a lot of virtual wholesalers out here, they think they have to have hundreds of thousands of dollars of startup capital and stuff to create a virtual wholesaling business. And you can create a legit virtual wholesaling business by yourself with $0. And again, at freewholesaling.com, we kind of break down that whole guide, but you don't need to be really complicating this business too much. Definitely with the list, government lists, probates, code violations, fire damage properties, water shutoffs, liens, pre-foreclosures. You can even do an auctions list. On top of that, you can do Zillow for sale by owners. There's a huge plethora of lists to be pulling. That's why I recommend you go to freewholesaling.com to check it out. And then you got to figure out what marketing channels you want to do in your systems. So the one thing I can tell you with marketing channels is it depends on the time, the resources, your skills. I definitely recommend starting out right now that cold calling is probably going to be your best thing to do it. If you got a dialer, that makes it a lot more easier. SMS text blasting is really good, then that's going to cost some money, so just understand that. The only type of marketing channels in virtual wholesaling I would honestly avoid is, I'm not a big fan of virtual drawing for dollars. I'm more of a fan if you can find a boots on the ground type person to actually go out here and drive for dollars for you. The virtual wholesaling, drawing for dollars thing, I've tried it, it just has not worked for me. So I cannot, in my heart of hearts, tell you to do it because I don't know if it's the best thing out here for not. So that's the first thing you got to understand. The next part here is, how are you going to pull this list and do the marketing channels? That's definitely another decision you need to make. So that's the one you got. So like, what are you going to do, right? So are you going to do it yourself? Are you going to be pulling the list yourself? If you use like PropStream, ListREI.com, Batch, ZachData.com, like, are you going to use any of those for your list pulling or whatever? Like, are you going to pull it yourself? Are you going to have a VA do it? For my lists, I have some other people pull the list for me. But like for a bigger, more important list, I'll actually pull like the high equity list just because I have the criteria for myself and my local market. I know what works and what doesn't. You need to make that decision for you. Now, when it comes to marketing channels, just figure out if you're going to be doing it. Are you going to be answering the SMS text blast? Are you not? That all comes down to what you choose. Now, at the end of the day, you got to devise more or less, if you're going to have VAs and people doing the marketing with you, type of scripts. And I prefer my cold calling script. I prefer my SMS text blasting scripts. I'm guilty. I prefer my own scripts, right? You need to figure out what scripts you like. I recommend you use the ones that I have for you guys out in the links below, but you don't have to, right? Like you don't have to use those scripts, but those are definitely scripts that I really recommend. You got to develop them for yourself and see which works. If you're going to train a VA, I do recommend you create your own like videos. No, you don't need the fancy camera and the studio set up like this right now. No, you don't need that. Honestly, just going like a Zoom type thing and record of you doing a process and then showing a VA to do it, that's probably gonna be the best thing you can do. Now, the next part here is acquisitions. Really, acquisitions comes down to having a system of your methods, scripts, the right way to talk to the seller that you train or you do it yourself. The last thing you should honestly delegate in a virtual wholesaling operation is the acquisitions process. So I recommend if you are not at $250,000 a year or even $500,000 a year, do not be having someone do acquisitions for you. You should probably still do acquisitions. And then this basically brings us back to disposition. So my acquisition stuff, again, the course, all that stuff's at freewholesaling.com, the entire thing. The next part here on building a virtual wholesaling business is dispositions. And dispositions is pretty much the same thing. Treat it like a business. You got to treat it like marketing to a point. That's the biggest piece of advice I give to you on building a virtual wholesaling business is if you need to treat your dispositions like you do your marketing. And most people don't do that. What do I mean by this? When you do your marketing, what do I always say? Always constantly market. Don't stop marketing. Create a time budget, create a money budget, right, of what you should be doing. Oh, I'm going to cold call for 2 hours today on this specific list, right? You should also do the same exact thing when it comes to your disposition. I'm going to spend an hour pulling cash buyers today, guys. In these times in virtual wholesaling real estate, you need to be focusing more and more on building cash buyers because the leads are going to be pumping up a little more. That means you're going to have to spend a little harder on the cash buyers, and that's not a bad thing. A lot of people treat that as a bad thing. It's supply and demand, right? Like you're either gonna have more buyers, you're gonna have less buyers, less focus on them, more focus on the sellers. It's a little creeping up where the sellers are less focused and the cash buyers there. It's always an ebb and flow in the market, and that's why I always record these videos so you can understand the entire process. But at the end of the day, you gotta treat virtual wholesaling as a legitimate business. The ones that don't always fail. You gotta remember too that if you are wanting to have employees, right? This is the one and biggest mistake I see people when they're scaling a virtual wholesaling business and they crash and fail and they never do well with it is they hire somebody and they expect that person to do a task that they have never done before. And what do I mean by this? We're not coding crazy things. We're not doing like insane stuff. At the end of the day, if I'm gonna hire someone to do the cold calling for me, I'm going to personally need to know how to cold call myself before I actually teach them how to cold call. That is probably one of the biggest pieces of advice I can give to you. If I want to teach someone how to cold call, I need to have my cold calling process and scripts down because I know what works in my market, what doesn't. If I just hire somebody to cold call because I don't like cold calling, guess what's going to happen? They're going to cold call the way that they're used to cold calling. And if they're from the Philippines or Pakistan or India, it's going to be, they're going to try to understand a virtual wholesaling business, and it's not going to click because they don't have the experience that you do for you doing well in this business, and it's not going to do well. So at the end of the day, you need to train people on stuff that you actually know really well, the stuff that's not making the most money in the tasks. So in no orders of importance, but the order that I think you should be doing it in is your first hire honestly should be for your marketing. Second hire should be for your dispositions, and the last hire should be for your acquisitions. Get out, scale the business, go even more on there. But guys, that's how you build a virtual wholesaling business. All my system scripts, all this stuff, you don't have to, figure it out, devise it yourself. I do have it absolutely for free at freewholesaling.com. I recommend everyone goes there and basically do it yourself. Kind of go through it. I got my challenge, all that stuff. So guys, do me a favor, smash that like button and subscribe if you got any value from this video, and we'll see you soon. Have a blessed one.